Hello, friends and fellow seekers. Welcome back to the Law of One Spiritual Advice podcast. My name is Elle. Today we are going to be talking about how temptation works, but more specifically the rules of choice, or maybe the mechanics of choice. So when you make a choice, what does that mean? How are you tested? How does the universe test your choice or give you the opportunity to actually make that choice? And so I have 2 or 3 quotes lined up for you, which we will read throughout the podcast for maximum clarity. But I'm just going to start by trying to make it sound very simple, I suppose. So listen carefully, okay? All right. So when you make a choice, is it really a choice if you don't actually have the options in front of you? Sometimes we like to think, okay, so I am going to make a choice to be a service to others entity. But what happens is that the universe, let's say the creator or whatever it is, the mechanics of this universe that we live in, has to offer you the polar opposite choice in order for you to decide that, no, I do not want that thing. I said I wanted the positive thing, and the negative thing is now in front of me, and I say thank you, but no thank you. And so the way I like to think about that is that it's not a true choice that you're making if you don't have all the options in front of you. It's very easy to say, yes, I want this, I want that. I would always choose this. But you know how it works in the face of actual choice and temptation. The universe, I suppose, knows you very well and will offer you that exact temptation that is best for you to test that choice. And so I sort of see it as a test in a way, and you may see it that way as well. And then maybe when you're actually seeing it manifest in your life, and in other words, that you're trying to make a positive choice and all of a sudden this negative temptation comes in front of you, well, now you may notice, aha, this is because I made an internal sort of moral choice to do positive, and now the universe is offering me its polar opposite so that I can really make that choice, not just say that I'm making the choice, but actually acting it out. And that is the way that I understand it to be, in that, so let's just make it really simple. So you're like, hey, there's apples and oranges. And you're like, you know what? If whenever there's apples and oranges in front of me, I'm always going to choose apples. And so that as you make that decision, then all of a sudden that day or the next day or sometime in the very near future, somebody comes up to you and you're thinking, I'm all about apples. And then someone comes up to you and they go, hey, oh man, I have these luscious, wonderful oranges. In fact, I've squeezed them into orange juice and I've made it go through some process, and it's just so easy and simple, and it's sitting right in front of me here. Would you like some of this orange juice? and so maybe you used to like orange juice, and you're like, oh wow, yeah, it's right in front of me, why not, right? Well, there you go, you failed in that decision, or whatever. Maybe there's no such thing as failure. You get many opportunities to try again. But that is sort of how it works. So I'm going to read you this quote, and then I'm going to break it down a little bit, because it goes into a lot more, such as temptations. And we all have individual temptations as well, temptations that are more personal to ourselves. And you will only know what yours are, I suppose. But I'll also give you a few examples from my life about how I have been tempted before, and just so you have a more clear understanding of how the mechanics of this choice works. So, in session 72.7 in the Law of One Raw Material, the questioner asks, we have here, I believe, a very important principle with respect to the Law of One. You have stated that the attitude of the individual is of paramount importance for the Orion entity to be able to be effective. Stop for a moment. The Orion entity just means a negative entity, to make it really easy for you, okay? So, would you please explain how this mechanism works with respect to the Law of One, and why the attitude of the entity is of paramount importance, and why this allows for action by the Orion or negative entity? Ra answers, I am Ra. The law of confusion, or free will, is utterly important in the workings of the infinite creation. That which is intended has as much intensity of attraction to the polar opposite as the intensity of the intention or desire. Thus, those whose desires are shallow or transitory experience only ephemeral configurations of what might be called the magical circumstance. There is a turning point, a fulcrum, which swings as a mind-body-spirit complex tunes its will to service. If this will and desire is for service to others, the corresponding polarity will be activated. In the circumstances of this group, there are 3 such wills acting as one, with the instrument in the, shall we say, central position of fidelity to service. This is as it must be for the balance of the working and the continuance of the contact. Our vibratory complex is one-pointed in these workings also, and our will to serve is also of some degree of purity. This has created the attraction of the polar opposite which you experience. Quickly stop there. The polar opposite of which you experience, meaning they have attracted a negative entity who's trying to basically silence them or, stop them from serving. Continuing on, we may note that such a configuration of free will, one pointed in service to others, also has the potential for the alerting of a great mass of light strength. This positive light strength, however, operates also under free will and must be invoked. We could not speak to this and shall not guide you, for the nature of this contact is such that the purity of your free will must above all things be preserved. Thus, you wend your way through experiences, discovering those biases which may be helpful. End of quote. And so there's a few things that I need to rewind and go back to give you some better clarity on this, such as, thus, those whose desires are shallow or transitory experience only ephemeral configurations of what might be called the magical circumstance. What are they saying there? Basically, if you have somebody who's not particularly a seeker, they're not really making a particularly strong moral choice, I would say, inside themselves. They're just sort of making kind of half-assed choices, or, if I may use it that way, then they're only going to be tempted with a shallow temptation. Do you see what I'm getting at? So it's like the deeper your desire to serve and to do well or to do good, then you're going to get a more magical or deep temptation from the other polarity, let's say, to give you that choice. And so, often people see this as, and someone's trying to do good, then they may be seemingly attacked by a negative entity or somebody acting on behalf of a negative entity, let's say. And they think, that's not really fair. But, to be honest with you, it sort of is fair. In fact, it's a way that you can see negativity in a positive light, in that those negative entities are just doing their service. Their service is to offer you the service to self path, and the more that you humbly reject that service to self path and you go down the service to others path, well then, my friend, you are polarizing on the path of service to others. And I suppose that is sort of the goal in service, is that you are polarizing. You're going more, you're stepping more into your power. You're not making shallow or transitory desires. You're making deep desires to serve, and those deep desires to serve are challenged by a negative entity or negative circumstance, which gives you the opportunity to reaffirm that, yes, you stand for the love and the light of the one infinite creator, and that is your choice. And we can glean many things from that too. You may see how loving and service to others entities often come into some rather challenging circumstances in their life. And, as tragic as it may seem sometimes, often those are opportunities for them, once again, to exemplify their polarity in the service to others way, and do what they think they live for, which is to serve others and to be a force of love in this universe, and to respect the free will of others, and all of that wonderful stuff that comes on the positive polarity path. And it's not all just negative temptations that come your way. They state also that your configuration of free will pointed in service to others also has the potential for alerting a great mass of light strength. So in other words, you're not alone. You have, let's say, unseen friends that are there to help you. And they say this positive light strength, however, operates also under free will, because free will is a major aspect of the service to others path. The service to self path doesn't really care about free will. They would do well, or they'd be happy to walk all over over free will if it serves them. And the service to others folks, we tend to want to respect the path of others and respect the free will of others to make the decisions. And, our unseen friends and guides and spirit guides, whatever you'd like to call them, they are there to help us too, but they state, they must be invoked. In other words, you would want to ask for help and be grateful, because being grateful is another way of asking for help, right? You're trying to say that, thank you for the guidance and the love and the clarity, and, I appreciate it, and please keep that up in my life because I would appreciate some positive light strength at my back. And they state, they would not speak to this, and they shall not guide us, for the nature of this contact is such that the purity of your free will must above all things be preserved. And once again, there is the exemplification of service to others entities such as Ra, who even in trying to help us must be careful with their, how they guide us, in that they can't just tell us what to do. They would rather prefer that we use our free will to make those choices by ourselves, so that the purity of that choice is, more pure. It comes from a place within, not just from someone telling you something is right, but from you seeing it with yourself and trying to exemplify it in your life. And so let us now jump into the fun part about the temptations and how those are offered to us. In session 62.23, Ross states, nearly all positive channels and groups may be lessened in their positivity or rendered quite useless by what we may call the temptations offered by the fourth density negative thought forms. They may suggest many distortions towards specific information, towards the aggrandizement of the self, towards the flowering of the organization in some political, social, or fiscal way. These distortions remove the focus from the one infinite source of love and light, of which we are all messengers, humble and knowing that we of ourselves are but the tiniest portion of the Creator, a small part of a magnificent entirety of infinite intelligence. End of quote. So you've maybe seen this yourself. I don't know, I've seen it quite a bit I used to read other channelings. I tend to only just read the LL Research channelings now, because over time I've learned that they have good discernment and they have sort of good protective group, and their purity of service to others is rather pure. And so I can kind of let my guard down a little bit, right? Don't want to put my discernment completely in the closet, but I can let down my guard a little bit that most of the things that come through these channelers and through these groups are of a generally positive nature. And of course, there's going to be little seeds of negativity, sown throughout them here and there, because nobody's completely perfect. However, I've seen it with other channelings that I used to read back in the day, like, 7 years ago or something. I would read these channelings of Michael, Jesus, whatever these people are pretending to channel or thinking they're channeling. I'm not sure if they're always getting the names right, but either way, they have some lovely information coming through, right? Some lovely, inspiring information, encouraging you to use your heart, encouraging you to, be charitable and to give love and to be a good force of love. However, they can be polluted, right? They can be polluted from negative temptations offered to them by negative thought forms, from negative entities, whoever they may be. It doesn't really matter. I try not to focus too much on them. They are just a portion of the Creator, and I suggest that you try to just see them as that as well, not necessarily as complete evil things, as much as just entities who have made a different choice from you. As much as you may disagree with them, they have the free will to do that, and they sort of play their part in this universe where they offer us this choice, right? They offer us a choice to go down the service to self path, and the more that we deny that and reject it and say no, thank you, but no thank you, the more that we get to progress along our path. So they do serve us, in their own way, let's say. However, going back to those channelings and those groups that I was talking about before, as the quote says, they may suggest many distortions towards specific information. So this is a temptation, right? Towards specific information. It can be like conspiracy theories, specific information. This even happened in the Law of One material when Don was talking about UFOs, and he was so into UFOs and, why do they have this type of craft versus this type of craft, blah, 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 blah. In my opinion, that is too specific information. It's almost like using a magnifying glass to look at something just so you can not see the bigger picture, right? It's like looking too close at something to then forget the magnificent infinite intelligence of the one infinite creator. So the distortions and the temptations come in the form of specific information towards the aggrandizement of self. And so, to break that one down is to basically stroke people's ego, to lift them up. Hey, we'll give you more followers. We'll make you famous, right? Something like that. And then towards the flowering of the organization in some political, social, or fiscal way. So say these people are part of a group or an organization, like such as LL Research, right? They would probably have been offered these types of temptations in their service as well. Like, hey, we'll get the politics behind you, and we'll get a bunch of people that to be able to vote, or I don't know, or just to hold you up in a social way, right? Like other people, like the community will get behind your back in this, or hey, we're going to give you a bunch of money, like here's in the fiscal way. And even I have been offered some of these things in my service to others, running the Law of One Instagram account, as it seemed to sort of grow in strength and the amount of followers, right? I had many of these temptations myself, and I'll tell you a bit about them. So let's start with the aggrandizement of self, okay? I'll just sort of explain to you how I guard myself from some of that. So with the Law of One material on the Instagram, I've got like 300,000+ followers, and I, have the temptation sometimes to make that account something to do with myself, right? You've seen it a lot where people often take the Law of One messages and they put themselves out there as like, hey, there's these messages, and look at me, I'm the one who's giving them to you. Ain't I special? Ain't I wonderful? Am I not like a wonderful person that is able to do this for all of you? Right? The aggrandizement of self, stroking that ego and making it more about the person and less about the material. In other words, making it about me rather than making it about the message, right? And so what I did is I always sort of made a point about not putting myself in the Law of One material on the Instagram channel, because I just want to avoid that. It's really easy for people to look at that thing and say, oh, wow, you have 380,000 followers. Wow, look at you. And, I kind of cringe at that when people think that way, because it's like, sure, it's a good sign that there's resonance going on with the message and the world. But I try to guard myself from the stroking of the ego. Like even in my personal life, you guys, I don't tell people about my Law of One Instagram. I actually keep it a bit of a secret. There's a few, precious friends and family who either have just found it on their own, and then, I will go to them and tell them that, hey, I have something to do with that. But in general, I never use it to sort of prove myself, right? Like often I want to like prove myself to my parents and my friends, and they're like, oh, you're just working some kind of crappy job, and like, what are you doing with your life? And I'm often tempted, right? Often tempted to want to just whip it open and show them, the amount of followers and the amount of likes that you get on each thing, and just to stroke my ego and see like, see, I'm doing things that people care about. But I do not do that, okay? I do not do that. I will, in vulnerability and in service to others, share my channel with somebody who I believe is a seeker and who seeks this knowledge and seeks it for the sake of the message and not to lift my ego up, and I do share that with a certain small amount of people. But for the most part, this is how I try to guard myself against some of these temptations, because I know I'm human, and I know that those are things that I can easily fall for in some of my weaker moments. So then we'll move on to the flowering of the organization in some political, social, or fiscal way. So one time, have you ever heard of the I don't know what it is, a TV organization, a media organization named Gaia. One time they came to me too and offered me to do some type of work with them so that I could flower my organization in some sort of social or fiscal way. And I had always seen some of the stuff they put out, And I never was fully resonant with it, in that it seemed more that they were about building a media company rather than maybe serving others. And, I could be obviously wrong with that, but that is another thing that I denied. And and there's other types of temptations that come my way, such as people who see the channel has a large following, and they'll often message me for years and years and years. I got tons of DMs, the private messages about people who wanted to promote things on my channel in exchange for money. And I don't want the people viewing the channel to think that I'm doing this for some sort of fiscal reason, right? I make a humble amount in my weekly paycheck that I get from work. I'll admit it's not a lot, and it definitely is a huge temptation for me to have a freer life, with freeing up my sort of fiscal ways to, in order to bring some more money my way, so that I can maybe not, sort of be at work and doing the monotony of the day stuff, so that I could better focus on serving. But that's what I felt. I felt that it would just pollute the message. It would pollute the message. I see some people who give ads on their channels, and, I've grown over the years, and I don't think of it such a negative thing anymore, because I realize that people need money to live, and it is what it is, so you got to do what you got to do. But I do want you to know that I denied every single one of those promotional types of things, because I want the message to remain pure. I want the message to be one of service to others and of love and light to the one infinite creator, and not take away from that, and not have people feel that I do what I do just to make a few bucks here and there. I do what I do because I wish to serve. I wish to help. The Law of One material has helped me a lot in my seeking and in my growing. And, even when I read it originally, I remember the first time reading it, just absolutely amazed at some of the stuff I was reading, and that like the resonance within me. You can feel your heart beating, and you're like, wow, it's almost like I knew this. It's like something I'm remembering from before. It was like something that I always knew, but just didn't have the words for. And that feeling of freedom, of like, oh wow, there are answers that exist out there, that freedom of choice. And I just wanted to share it with everybody. I want to share that feeling that I have and continue to have as I read this material and exemplify it in my life. And so there you go. There's a few of the sort of temptations, at least with the Law of One account, that I have dealt with and continue to deal with still. And so I want to mention that I eventually started a Patreon. I only started that Patreon at first because I had a dear friend who was suffering from cancer, and he wasn't able to work, and so his family, didn't have money, and so I started that Patreon so that I could give all of that money to his wife, and so that they could, continue to live freely and not worry about finances, so they could focus on my friend's health. Eventually he passed away, and eventually they got their insurance money, and so there was no longer a need. That she said that, thank you, but I don't need it anymore. Thank you so much for your service. And in that, I came out to you guys and said, look, I'm still going to be obviously giving some of this money away as I see fit to people that need the service when I see it, and that I'm also going to be using this money for myself as I need to live my life. And also I almost lost my job, and so things were getting kind of tight in that area. And so then I decided, I'm going to make this Patreon more geared towards myself, but in a way that is still freely given, right? Everyone's free to come and go as they please. You don't get anything extra from me for being a part of my Patreon, because that is a part of freely give, freely receive that I believe to be true, is that I want to freely give what I think is important. And if others, find that valuable, I hope that they will get behind it and, see that this message is making its way out into the world, and understand that I do need a little bit of assistance in my daily living. And I can do this more with you guys on my back. And there's a number of you who have done that. And I just so infinitely grateful that it has worked out that way, because just for years and years and years, I've always had a trouble with money and asking for it and just feeling unworthy, etc., etc. But lately, it seems to be the right thing. I feel right about keeping things free. Like, people are free to give and I'm free to receive. And I think that is, in my opinion, the most healthy way for me to avoid all of these sort of temptations and some of the constrictions that come with, trying to get involved with another media group or, some type of political, social, or fiscal thing, because then people want you to do things a certain way, and I want to be free to serve as I see fit. So, sorry, that was a long sort of sidetrack there, but anyways, they state, these distortions remove the focus from the one infinite source of love and light, of which we are all messengers, humble and knowing that we of ourselves are but the tiniest portion of the Creator, a small part of a magnificent entirety of infinite intelligence. And so that is what I hope you get from a lot of these messages is, the love and light and the infinity of the one infinite Creator, and that we can step above some of these temptations. We can step beyond them and attempt to seek and serve in a pure manner. And of course, none of us are perfect. We will succumb to some of these temptations, but those temptations and those choices will come around again for you, and you will have ample opportunities to exemplify your choice. And hey, while I'm telling stories, let's tell another one, because this one definitely came up as I was talking about temptations with my friend, who sparked a lot of this in me, a lot of these thoughts and this idea for this podcast, as I was having a nice deep conversation with a friend at the skate park the other day. So just remember that I am a man in this story, okay? And so I'm going to have a bit of my bias in a certain direction, of course. But anyways, I want to give you another idea of how these temptations work and how choice works. So this was a long time ago now, like I'm not sure as well, maybe 7-8 years ago. But I had a girlfriend at that point, and I believe that there was a great opportunity for us to have, a wonderful love between us. And I was on that path of making that conscious decision that yes, this is good and this is a wonderful relationship and all is well. And we were both younger, and around the Christmas time, we both went to see our respected families in different cities. And I remember specifically what happened was that I had, like I said, made this sort of moral internal choice to be a loving service to others person and sort of dedicate myself to this other self in a healthy way. And of course, what happened to me? I was offered a proper temptation. So the proper temptation in this respect came from a old friend who I will consider, a girl who is very hot, may I say, okay? She was like, we're going to, dare I rate things, right? She's like, oh man, this girl's like a 10 in my eyes. Okay. And so what happened while I was on this whole Christmas vacation? Well, she said, hey, I'm really attracted to you, let's go to your place. And, well, do I really need to say more? Okay. So then what happened is that yes, I ended up cheating on my wonderful girlfriend, and that was a choice that I made, and it was a terrible, awful choice. But I just want you to know how deep this sort of magical circumstance is. It's almost like these weird, seemingly negative miracles can happen. Like, I'm not a particularly wonderfully good-looking guy, and tend to have a somewhat medium view of myself and try to stay humble, right? And I suppose basically what I'm trying to say is that I never thought that I would be able to attract that sort of girl, and all of a sudden, here she is throwing herself in my lap, and so I just want you to understand the power of choice, that when you make a choice, you're going to be offered a temptation, and a temptation that is personal to you, right? One that it's almost like a negative entity can see within you, and they can't create a negative thing within you. Like, they can't create a negative temptation within you because it's sort of the workings of free will. But you already have little bits inside yourself, little chinks in your armor, as it may be called, little parts of yourself that are imperfect, little aspects of your ego that have gone unchecked. And these negative entities are really good at finding like the most wonderful temptation that they can find in in your universe and magnifying it and putting it in front of you to offer you this so that you stray away from the love and the light and you go down that service to self path of just a momentary gratification, one that doesn't last very long, but is enough to sort of ruin the love and the light that you have otherwise begun to create. And you want me to tell you the same story about how that even backfired on me and that I did make the wrong choice or the negative choice in that circumstance? Well, when we both got back from our Christmas vacations, we started to talk, and what do you know what happened? My girlfriend at that time, who was visiting in a other city, also cheated on me. We cheated on each other almost at the same time. And, you have to wonder if I had made that positive choice, would maybe for some reason, maybe she wouldn't have made that negative choice either. But anyways, I know that's sort of a weird story to tell, but it was just such a strong one in my view of like, wow, like these things are real, and that when you do make a deep choice, not a shallow choice, but a deep choice, you shall be offered its deep polar opposite, my friend. As you seek to do good, is it really a choice if you just say, oh, I'm a good person, I would always do the good thing? But when the most personal temptation that is deepest for you in your mind is offered to you, is sitting in front of you, do you still have the wherewithal within you to say no? Thank you, no thank you. That's very tempting. It's very, very tempting. But no, I reject your offer, good sir, good friend, negative entity, whatever it is. I choose to seek the love and the light and to continue on with the positive choice that I decided to make earlier. So then this even goes into some more metaphysical weirdness, where you may have the question, okay, so I'm on the service to others path. Some people like to say service to all, and I would agree with that, right? We want to serve all is one, and we are all part of that one. And so what if a negative entity offers us something? Like, are we not doing a disservice to that negative entity by rejecting them? And guess what, my friend? You kind of are. It's sort of like you can't satisfy everyone, right? You want to do good, but there's these other negative side of the universe, of the world, of whatever, that wants you to do bad, let's say, if I just use little simple terms like that. So you can't do both good and bad, okay? And so what do? Well, you have to basically respect the free will of others to seek as they see fit. And then you have to respect your free will and your free choices as that, I've made this decision and I shall continue on this path. I see your other path over there that you're offering me. Thank you, but no thank you. And so I have a quote for you here where they talk about that. So in session 67.26, the questioner asks, then there is no other service that we can at this time offer that fifth density negative entity of the Orion group who is so constantly with us. As I see it now, there is nothing that we can do for him from your point of view. Is this correct? Ra mentions, I am Ra, this is correct. There is great humor in your attempt to be of polarized service to the opposite polarity. There is a natural difficulty in doing so, since what you would consider service is considered by this entity non-service. As you send this entity love and light and wish it well, it loses its polarity and needs to regroup. Thus, it would not consider your service as such. On the other hand, if you allowed it to be of service by removing this instrument from your midst, you might perhaps perceive this as not being of service. You have here a balanced and polarized view of the Creator, two services offered, mutually rejected, and in a state of equilibrium in which free will is preserved and each allowed to go upon its own path of experiencing the one infinite Creator. End of quote. And so you can maybe start to see and get a feel of how the mechanics of choice works. You seek deeply to make a deep, let's say, moral choice within yourself. That choice is challenged by a negative entity or the negative side of Earth or whatever you want to call it, to give you the opportunity to not make that choice, right? So it's to give you a true choice. It's to say, here is option A, here is option B. You can't have option A and B. Which one would you like? And so hopefully you continue to keep choosing option A. But like they state, we want to do service to others, but you can't serve a negative entity in that way. They even state here, as you send this entity, this negative entity, love and light, and you wish it well, this is actually the type of thing that makes the negative entity lose its polarity and basically stumble upon its path. The negative entity wants to control you and manipulate you into its viewpoint, and the more that you stay steadfast in the love and the light, and you wish it love, an honest love from a place that is an honest love for this other self, this other negative entity, that is actually your greatest protection from that entity, as paradoxical as it sounds, right? And then they state that, so say you wanted to serve that negative entity and you wanted to remove the instrument from this midst. And I don't want to say what remove means, right? You know what it means. But they would see that, the positive group would see that as not being of service, right? They want Carla, the channeler, to continue living a long and healthy life. They don't want her to be removed from this density. They would, if they were to do that and serve the negative entity, that would seemingly in their head be like, no, that seems like a really bad thing that we've done. And so, like they state here, you have a balanced and polarized view of the Creator. You have two services offered, mutually rejected. The service to others path is rejecting the service to self path. The service to self path is rejecting the service to others path. They're mutually rejected in a state of equilibrium in which the free will is preserved of each of these entities, and each is allowed to go upon its path of experiencing the one infinite Creator. And so, my friends, that is the idea with this. Once again, right, I just want to sort of reiterate the fact that that is a way to see the negativity in the world. And as sad as it might seem that people are using their free will to partake in negativity, you can rejoice that they're using their free will, I suppose. But, right, it's not about you forcing your view upon others and forcing them to come into the service to others path. It is more about you exemplifying the service to others path in yourself, and that service to others radiance will radiate from your being as you exist and you live and you go about your day, and others will resonate with that, and they will see that in you, and it will give them the strength and the courage to do it the same themselves. And you can see then those negative entities as not necessarily evil and misguided. You can see them as, okay, they're on the service to self path. They're doing what they think is right. I'm doing what I think is right. And so, great. You're using your free will, their negative entity. And as much as I, offers a distaste in my mouth, a sort of gross taste in my mouth, I will still honor your free will to seek as you see fit. But thank you, no thank you. I reject that vision of service to self, and I would like to keep on the service to others path and not succumb to nihilism and to all of those sorts of negative attitudes that are so prevalent in our society. Instead, right, we want to be a lighthouse for others, of radiance, of joy, of no fear within ourselves, so that we can spread that love and light as we see fit. And those who will resonate, and they will pick up their own batons and join the race. And that is what we are here to do. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about this choice thing, so that you understand that when you do make a choice and something is offered to you, and it's usually a very personal offering, a very personal temptation, something within yourself that isn't completely pure, and that negative entity will magnify that within you in hopes that you succumb to that negative temptation. And sure, right, they're trying to create trickery with you, but they are doing their service. In fact, they are challenging you in your path so that you can then reaffirm the service to others path, and you can become more polarized on the service to others path, meaning, you're becoming more powerful, to be honest with you. And so as they seek to take away your power, the more that you, let's say, win in that exchange and use your free will to continue on this service to others path, well, then your power is increased. And so although these negative entities try to bring you down, they're really serving you in the larger aspect of things, okay? And that's why, this gets a little bit weird, and I don't like to say this too much, but, they've even mentioned that whole Lucifer guy is the light bringer, and that's why. It's because only when you're faced with what you do not want do you really choose what you do want, right? So when I made that choice and I screwed up with my girlfriend at the time, right, like I realized that is not what I want. And only then did I, come into myself and repoint my focus, repoint my will in service to others and say, you need to be higher on the discernment category, my friend. You need to be more pure in your heart. You need to live by the way that you feel and live by the way that you preach. And so, every time that I'm challenged and these negative things seem to happen to me, it is a good reason for me to regroup, realize what I live for, what I'm here for, and I'm here to serve others and to love myself so that I can love you guys better and love everyone within my life better and do that by exemplifying love and service in my life. And so I think that's enough for today. I think I've probably rambled on quite a bit, and I'm not even sure how coherent a lot of it was, but if you've made it this far through the podcast, I'm sure you get a sense of what I'm saying with some of my stories. Last one, okay? I also said one time that I would never do that white powdery substance, right, as a drug, and I always said that I would never do that because I have a kind of addictive personality. And as I stated that, then there was a weekend that I was at a friend's house, and all of a sudden he had this bag in front of him, and he goes, "Oh, hey, look at this! I have this. Like, would you like it? Would you like to try it?" And I'm like, no, thank you. Because at that point, I had already experienced this sort of magical circumstance, and I knew that that's what was happening, that this temptation was being put right in front of me, made real easy. Hey, it's free. You can just go for it. It's great. It's going to make you feel awesome. And I rejected that, my good friends. And what happens after that? I don't know. Generally positive things happen after that, that go to show you that you made the right choice is sort of how I'll put it. And so, keep making those choices, keep making the positive service to others choices. And my friend, you will be tempted, but the magic will come back in the ways that it does, in the positive ways, the more that you reaffirm that choice within yourself. And so thank you, everybody, for listening. If you like the podcast, if you like this topic, could you please share it around with your friends? I'm trying to grow the channel a bit, and, that helps with the algorithm. If you hit the old like button on this whole podcast, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you'd like to hear more ramblings from myself. And as I stated before, freely give, freely receive. You can join my Patreon, shoot me a one-time PayPal at theoneinfinitecreator.com, and you just scroll down a little bit till you find that support section. There's a couple of links there. Once again, infinite gratitude to all of you who are part of that. Thank you so much. For those that do not have the abundance to be a part of the giving, do not worry. I do not expect anything from any of you. I truly want to have this on a freely give, freely receive basis. And so, you don't have to feel bad if you can't throw anything my way. It's all good. I would rather just that you continue seeking within yourself, have that strength and the confidence and the love to know that you're not alone out there and that other people are trying their best just like you. And that's all I ask of you. Just do your best, okay? Okay. Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, you guys. Take care. I love you.